بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Dear brothers, sisters and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good evening to this extremely special event on Facebook Live this evening. We apologize for the late start, the technical delay that always happens, but I've got with me my brother and my dear colleague and international director for Cage, Mohammed Rabbani. Most
of all people sitting here, swallow some of our own advice.
While we've been traveling.
Yep.
And we've had issues with Schedule 7 being detained.
Yep.
You've been stopped multiple times, at least 20 times.
Yeah.
What happened this time around, and why is it so? Did you feel it's so necessary to essentially not cooperate, not give you a passport? Here's the background story.
Yeah, essentially, I was working for Cage. It was a Cage mission, an investigation, so I was abroad. I came back, and the investigation, which we'll go into a little bit later on, was a very, very sensitive torture case that we've been working and building up. And in fact, this particular visit was the visit where the client, who is a survivor of torture, gave us instructions to go back and organize his legal defense, which would be spread over multiple jurisdictions. And the objective of the defense would be to seek accountability for the torture that he's faced. So that's the context. And I was coming back. I landed at Heathrow Airport. And Schedule 7, like you mentioned, it's become almost like a routine. And I really hate saying that, because we shouldn't say that. I mean, we shouldn't feel that when you're a Muslim, you're traveling.
You've got to prepare 3 hours extra early, go and contemplate, anticipate that you're going to be stopped and so forth. We all have to go through it.
I mean, it's not right for us to be, any Muslim or any person, to just accept it, that this is part of my routine when traveling while Muslim. So anyways, I was expecting it. But what happened different on this occasion was, when the police officers asked me for my devices, after the interrogation, or as part of the interrogation, they were insistent that I have to hand over my passwords. Now, previously, when I've been stopped and my devices have been confiscated, and they've asked for my passwords, I've explained and declined, and they've usually accepted it. So on this occasion, they just were adamant, we want your passwords. And I explained that I can't give it to you because it means I would be in breach of trust and confidentiality, which any professional that works with other people would understand. For example, lawyers, journalists, doctors, psychologists, all of them have a duty of care to their clients and patients.
So this is so people understand. This is like somebody from the Daily Mail. He's got a scoop, say in Russia, about Donald Trump getting information or being directed by the Russians.
Yep.
He flies, still gets stopped at Heathrow Airport, gets asked this question: can you give us the passwords to your devices?
Yeah.
Now he's in a predicament. If the security services that are directly linked to the British government here, and the United States by extension, now he's lost his story, he's lost his scoop, he's lost his integrity as a journalist.
Yeah, and just on that, the most important part is whoever his source was, he can't protect the source.
So he's lost his credibility entirely,
absolutely.
And so has his organization.
This is one of the most fundamental things in journalistic ethics. If you're a Daily Mail journalist, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's
respect those ethics.
That's up for debate. Yeah.
But any other journalist would understand that this is like the ABC of journalistic ethics. That you have to protect your sources, and under this power, if it was, as you say, a journalist coming in, they would be compelled to hand over their password, which would reveal their sources and all their material.
So, Brother Rabbani, this brings up multiple aspects of Cage's work, of what you've been dealing with. Before we go into the detail about this particular case, I know we can't talk all about it. We can talk about around it.
Yeah.
You came when you started working for Cage. What was it that struck out at you about this organization that's been born out of the abuses at Guantanamo? What is it that you saw? What were some of the first cases that you saw that made you think that this is
very, very
widespread?
clear, very straightforward. For me, in fact, I can remember the first actual case. I joined Cage 5 years ago. I joined as a managing director. I was overall responsible for Cage's work and activities for the last, say, 4.5 years, 5 years. Even maybe like the first month after I joined, and the first actual case that I was involved in working in, it involved a brother who's a British citizen who was held in a Saudi prison, and he had suffered really, really terrible treatment. He was abused and tortured, and one of the most harrowing things that I remember from what he told us was he and his fellow inmates would be tortured during the night, and then in the morning they could hear the adhan from Masjid al-Nabawi, literally like down the road or something. And just that contrast, you know, in the land of the Prophet ﷺ, these
Islam's second most holy city, and then you're hearing people screaming.
It's just it's terrible. So he came to us and he shared with us some material information, and he said that this is the guy, I have information on him, this is the evidence, and he's the one who was responsible for my torture. So we were compelled, you know, a survivor of abuse who comes to you seeking accountability for the abuse that he's done. And what was amazing was, you know, why did he come to Cage? Why didn't he go to another big human rights organization or whoever?
So when you initially came to the Cage office, in addition to this case, you would see, you know, literally survivors of torture walking into the office on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Right?
Even to this day. Even to this day, there are brothers, there are sisters, mainly brothers, who are living examples of the spirit of humanity after going through the experience of torture. So that, of course, has an effect on you, right? And not, I mean, just going back to the story of my landing and so on. On that visit, the man that I'm dealing with, whose testimony I'm hearing and collecting, he's telling me that he was in prison for over a decade, say. His abusers would come to him and do awful things. Things, you know, it's all documented. I don't want to go into it as well because there's a pending legal case.
Yeah.
But, and he told me, you know, I didn't submit to my torturers. Whatever they wanted to do to me, however they want to break me down, because that's the objective of torture. It's to actually systematically break down a person and then reconstruct them as a completely compliant human being, dehumanized first and then just something that is compliant. So, and I looked at him and I saw all the suffering and abuse that he went through. He's smiling, he's dignified, he's completely content. And the most important thing is that he said that they didn't break me, they didn't get out of me anything, right? After hearing all of that, then I land, and then obviously these police officers are threatening me, like, you know, if you don't give us your passport, you're going to go to prison, or we're going to arrest you. So I couldn't, you know, it was a really straightforward choice for me, and I couldn't do that. I had a duty of care to these people. And I think for the brothers and sisters who are listening as well, I mean, all of us will understand a basic concept in Islam, which is amana. If you are entrusted with something, however simple it is, look at the example of the Prophet ﷺ when he was doing hijrah. The people who were plotting to kill him, he advised Ali radiallahu anhu to stay behind in order to return back to them
their trusts.
This is part of our.
Well, of course,
deen.
the Prophet ﷺ himself was called Al-Nabi, called Al-Amin. Al-Amin.
Yeah.
And you know, in many Jummah khutbahs they'll say Al-Adda al-Amana, that he discharged his trusts. And as you know, the Prophet ﷺ said, that, you know, about a hypocrite, munafiq, إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذَبَ إِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفَ. When he speaks, he lies, and when he gives a trust, he breaks it. So of course, you have no choice. You're actually compelled.
Yeah.
You actually have, as a Muslim and as a person of conscience, you have no choice. But imagine if you'd broken the trust. Imagine if you'd said, okay, I'm going to give you the password. Imagine you'd done that, and then it comes back. Now, this is really important because this happened on the 20th of November, right?
Yeah.
At the beginning of November, Donald Trump was elected, became president-elect of the United States of America. And one of the things that he said before his election is that I will use waterboarding and I will do a lot more. When he came into power, on the, I think it's the 25th of the 1st of January this year, he said the most shocking thing any president could ever say in the 21st century. I believe torture works.
Yeah.
Now,
It's unbelievable.
in a time where this is happening, where neither Bush was prosecuted nor Obama, in fact, they set the template. Bush said that if it's we will change the meaning of torture.
Yeah.
Obama said we tortured some folk, and even accepts that torture led to the rise of ISIS.
Yes,
He accepts that, right?
Yep.
But he said everybody's immune from prosecution. President Trump comes along. He knows that there's been no prosecutions.
Exactly.
Therefore, he's
That's
free
a green
to say
light.
what he says.
Exactly. That's a green light for him. And now that he said it,
Yeah.
it's a green light for all the criminals
Exactly.
who've been involved in this, not only to get away with it and to continue the abuse.
The United States have done a Senate report on torture, where the CIA cases of torture have been accepted, and still there have been no prosecutions. So, inshallah, brothers and sisters, I want you to, there's this Twitter storm that we're doing right now, inshallah, that's supposed to begin literally in a few minutes. The hashtag is right to privacy, and inshallah, if you start to go and tweet about this case, what you've heard so far, and what you'll continue to hear, inshallah, for the rest of the Facebook Live, inshallah, continue to do that. We want people to understand this case. We want people to understand the principles behind this case, the reasons behind this case. And as we go along, we will be looking at some of your questions and some of your comments and answering any queries.
There's some really nice comments, and I really feel humbled and really appreciate your generosity. I just mentioned there's a brother, Majid Freeman, who's a mashallah really
great brother. We all know and love him, mashallah.
We have your back, bro. You took a principled approach because of amana. May Allah reward you. May Allah accept you as well, brother Majid. Sister Saira Zafar, who you have the community behind you. Alhamdulillah, I felt that. I mean, the strange thing is, I'm not doing this on my own. I feel no one should be under the illusion that I'm just individually doing this. No, I am blessed to be surrounded by amazing individuals, and that's what gives me, firstly, Cage and the work that they've done and what I've learned from the organisation, to be surrounded by survivors who've come out intact from those abuses and difficult ordeals, and experts who've understood the issues around the war on terror and national security policies. So I'm blessed. I mean, it's not as though I'm just standing up on my own.
I just want to say to the brothers and sisters, so that you understand, Brother Rabbani and I have worked together for several years, and we've never done anything like this together at all. This is the first time he's ever done this, and he's been very much behind the scenes. He's a mashallah, an excellent manager of people, excellent organizer, very visionary. But this is the first time he's done something like this. So I hope you appreciate, inshallah. Essentially, everybody has to pay a price. If you take a stance, if you take a principle, you have to pay a price, and part of that price is coming out in this case, coming out in the public and standing for a principle. And so that you do all understand, Brother Rabbani is due to return to the police station tomorrow morning, and it is possible, it's not beyond the realm of possibility, that he'll get arrested and maybe even charged. We don't know what will happen, but this is part of the reason. So Rabbani,
there's a few comments here.
Okay.
I mean, it's nice. I mean, but there's brother Fahad Ansari. Assalamu alaikum, brother Fahad. Allah reward you. The choice is between willfully not complying with the commands of anti-terror police under Schedule 7 or not complying with the command of Allah to protect the trust placed in you. That was a dilemma. That was a dilemma that I was presented with. How can, Allah says, Inna Allah ya'murukum an tu'addu al-amanati ila ahliha. It's a clear command. And I think any moral, conscious person, they wouldn't just automatically breach their trust with, especially vulnerable individuals.
Yeah, just to translate, so Allah orders you to discharge His trust to its people.
Yeah, that's a clear command.
It's an order.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an order. And all I was trying to do was to reason with the police and say to them that allow me the opportunity to get consent from the people concerned. Once I've got the consent, inshallah, I can take it the next step. But if you don't allow me the opportunity to get consent, then you've put me in an impossible situation.
So then when that happened, once they made the decision that they're not going to accept your position, they literally handcuffed you and then took you off to a police station.
Yeah, which I did also ask that, is this necessary? because
You asked them to handcuff you, or asked if it was necessary?
I was asking, is this necessary that you need to put me in handcuffs?
Yeah. And what was their response? Why did they do that?
They said, yeah, they just continued with it. And they, as you said, there were maybe 2 or 3 police officers. They accompanied me. And I said, I thought we were going to go through a back sort of exit.
So you walked through the airport handcuffed. So now you know what it's like.
Yeah, I did say you're my leader. I'll follow you wherever you go. So, inshallah, I'm trying my best, Akhil, but let's see how it goes.
I think there's some important statistics that we need to give out to people so they understand. I was on the LBC just 2 days ago with Nick Ferrari, I think, who's some presenter on LBC radio. And after me was this police inspector who came on, and he said that although it's established that over 500,000 people have been stopped and detained and questioned under Schedule 7, he's never met anybody like that at all. So it suggests and tells us, doesn't it, what?
It's just
disconnection. Complete disconnection. For 17 years this law has been about. So the Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act, so people understand, began before the War on Terror.
Yep, year 2000.
Right?
Yep.
So this has been going on for 17 years.
Yep.
We have essentially a community of people, Asians, let's say, the statistic says Asians are 42 times more likely to be stopped than non-white, than white people. Yeah. What is that telling us? And in terms of, you just said there are 20,000 people at least stopped every year?
Every year, the average is 50,000.
50,000.
Last year, according to Home Office statistics, it's 30,000. Of the 30,000, it's really important. I mean, the 30,000, I mean, some of them, I don't know how many people are listening or viewing this talk, but I think, let's say 30,000, amongst some of the viewers today, there will be people who either have been stopped or know somebody who's been stopped. Yeah. Or they've been stopped and dealt with under Schedule 7, but they don't realize that it's Schedule 7. And one of the things we definitely want you to do is please come forward and tell us your story. This is crucial. And so in case, we've had lots of comments from many really, really generous and warm comments. And one of the things everybody's asking is, how can you help? So this is something very, very practical, and we do need your help in this. Please come forward. If you've had an experience while traveling and in connection to Schedule 7, all we want is, even if you want to remain anonymous, it doesn't matter. Just note down your details, send it to us via the website that we mentioned earlier on, which is passwithprivacy.com. This is really, really important. And the other thing you can do right tonight, for example, before you sleep, just go through your phone book. Look at maybe 20 people that you think may have had this experience. Try and reach out to them and ask them to contact us and give us your story. The more people who come forward, the more, inshallah, we can generate interest in this campaign. You're out there, definitely. 50,000 people, 30,000 last year alone. So clearly the people are out there, but there's a problem because people are afraid, maybe. So
I just want to get something of a statistic so people again understand that. So 30,000 people were stopped last year.
Yep.
You're one of those 5 who was arrested.
Yep.
Now we don't know what became of the other 5. So you get.
I do know one other thing.
Right.
Of the remaining 4, 2 were charged.
2 were charged.
Okay, we don't know for what crimes.
Right. So essentially, you're more likely to get an arrest if you just randomly stop somebody on the street than you are 0.02% people have been charged on this.
Exactly. So what this proves
is it's using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
And also what this also is very disturbing because most people, including the Muslim community, we're led to believe that Schedule 7 is a necessary power to stop terrorists from coming into the country and to protect national security. It is, but look at the way it's being applied. If it was to stop terrorists from coming into the country, why aren't 30,000 people being arrested for crimes?
I just want to quote a tweet from Max Hill, who is now the new independent reviewer on terrorism. Yes. And he responded to somebody who asked him a question about whether he supports random stop and search. And he said, and I quote, "No, I do not support random stop and search on the street, nor the more intrusive Schedule 7 powers without reason." Now here, the qualification is without reason. In your case, what was the reason that they gave?
This is so strange because I kept on saying to the police officers that I think they were trying to reassure me. So they kept on saying to me, that, you have nothing to worry about, Mr. Rabbani. We don't actually suspect.
So you were neither wanted. Let's just get this part
Yeah,
straight.
yeah.
You have no police record.
None.
You've never been arrested for terrorism or anything like that. You've never been charged. You're not like me.
I'm trying my best.
And so, despite all of this, and they said to you that you're not wanted for anything, you're not suspected of having committed a crime.
Yep.
Right?
They said you have nothing to worry about. You're not under suspicion. So I said to them, but that makes it worse. Because if you said that I was under suspicion of a crime, or you said that you need to access my devices in connection to an investigation into a crime, it's kind of reasonable. But you're telling me, actually, I'm not suspected. So why are you then trying to force me to give my password when there's no reason? And that's what Max Hill was referring to. So there's a recognition that there shouldn't be a power or a law that exists where the basic level of suspicion isn't present.
I remember a few years back, there was one of the ministers, the transport minister, I think she said, look, we're not going to be stopping little old white ladies coming from Switzerland. So what does that tell you? Does it tell you that this is now racial profiling? After all, Schedule 7, it's supposed to be random stops. If you're wanted, they're going to just stop you anyway and arrest you. But this is random. What's random about being 42 times more likely to be detained under Schedule 7?
Sadly, we've been let down. We've been let down by many, many people. I'm not going to go into it right now. I've got something happening tomorrow morning. So later on, inshallah, we need to talk about all of that. Those people have let us down.
Reminder again to the brothers and sisters, inshallah, the Twitter storm. Right to privacy is the hashtag, right to privacy. Continue with it, inshallah. Support it, retweet it, put out what you hear from here, and support the brothers.
Can I just read out a couple more comments?
Yeah.
There's a comment from Aisha. As a practitioner who writes clinical notes for survivors of sexual abuse and violence, when often I'm the first person they have ever confided in, I could never allow for anyone to have passwords to access that kind of sensitive material. They have already been violated in the most horrific ways. I would never allow them to be violated again. Thank you and Jazakumullah khair. Jazakumullah khair for sharing that comment, Sister Aisha. But that's a real example.
It is. One thing a term that you've used that is sort of reverberated in my mind is you've called this a digital strip search. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever been strip searched. It's happened to me and many people I know more times than I can remember. But a digital strip search, explain what you mean by that.
What I mean by that is, firstly, we have to understand what a password is. And sometimes it's difficult for people to conceptualize it. But really, if you look at it very simply, the analogy of a password is the coffee's arrived.
The coffee is here. More importantly, the coffee person is here.
Thanks, Ahi. You did promise me coffee earlier on, so thanks for going out and getting it. A password is a key. It's like a key to the front door of your house. That's what it is. Or the front door of your office. With that one key, you gain access to everything inside the home. Personal, private, intimate space. A password is actually more than that, because actually, if you think about it, most of us digitally have more information than we have in the physical sense. So that's what I meant, that the violation that takes place when someone is forced to hand over their password is like them being strip searched.
In my view, and I'll tell you this, it's actually worse. It's actually worse. Because it's not just you physically being searched. It's other people.
It's other people.
Imagine now, and this has happened to me. I'm going to tell you a little story about what happened to me many years ago. I was asked for a password, but not at an airport, in Bagram detention facility, where I saw people beaten to death, people being stripped naked, being punched and kicked, women being tortured. And they said to me, we want your password. And what had happened this time around is that I'd been arrested in the UK prior to that, and I'd refused to give my passport. This was back in 2000. The judge ruled in my favor that I'm not under any obligation to give that password. 2 years later, when I was in the Bagram detention facility, they asked me again for the password. This time it was the Americans, the CIA and the FBI, under torture. I mean, physical torture. And they got it from me. And I knew that this information had come from the British government, and it was part of my case against the government that were complicit in my torture. But what happens with this is that you realize, why didn't I give the passport in the first place? Pictures, details of your children. Who can imagine? Who would allow somebody, some complete stranger that they have no connection to at all, to see not just pictures of their wife, but of their young children?
Especially someone who's hostile to you.
Yeah.
And in that situation, like what you've gone through, may Allah accept it, may Allah protect all of us from it. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I want to make a connection to what you just narrated. One of the conversations that I've had after this whole thing began was with some learned people in our community. Of course, I went to them for advice and so on. And their maybe sort of intuition or gut reaction was, if you were threatened with arrest, which I was, why didn't you just give the password? And I had to explain to them that arrest, my basic understanding of sharia, basic understanding of Islamic knowledge, I'm not a learned person, but the basic understanding tells me that there's something called ikrah, which is in sharia defined as compulsion, where there's license to breach laws in sharia because you're compelled, right? So what I was saying to those shuyukh was, Jazakallah khair, Brother Abdullah, Allah bless you.
Thank you.
I feel a bit bad that the audience can't join us, but I was promised coffee at Cage, so Jazakumullah khair. What I said to them was, arrest doesn't reach that level of compulsion. The threat has to be something imminent, has to be something physical, something that's life-threatening. None of that's contained in an arrest. Whereas in your case, you're talking about physical abuse, physical torture.
Yeah.
Of course you can hand over your password.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But in my case, all I was faced with was this threat that we're going to arrest you. That doesn't mean I've done anything wrong. It doesn't mean I've been charged with a crime. It doesn't mean I'm going to jail. Nothing. It's just an arrest.
And so, linking this all back, to me, and I know, as I said, there's many principles around this. This is about harassment, but being targeted because you're a Muslim.
Yeah.
It's about being targeted because of the organization that you work for, perhaps. This is about the right to privacy, which perhaps a lot of people don't really understand.
Yeah.
There are many laws being passed. There's a Snoopers Charter, even as we speak. There's the Investigatory Powers Bill. So the very essence of what some police officers have said in this country. So Peter Fahy, for example, has said that this country is moving to becoming a police state, and that he himself doesn't want to be responsible for ordering thought police. Now, this is the head of Greater Manchester Police himself. This is all part of those powers pervading society and us being blinkered by saying that if it doesn't affect me, why should I bother, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sadly, there's been a growth in the way states are grabbing power, and then the balance between citizen and state is tilting more and more towards the state's direction. As Muslims, we must be part of that conversation. We have guidance in our deen which talks about privacy, which talks about the roles of the state and how to have a fair society. So in this case, as you say, Akhi, one of the things that it does touch upon is, to what extent can a government intrude into the lives of completely law-abiding ordinary citizens, and should a state have that authority to actually violate your privacy when we're not suspected of any wrongdoing?
And the other thing that happens, we've mentioned it before, touched on it before, but I can say it again from personal experience. I'm certain, if 500,000 people have been stopped under this, and they all feel the same, even if it's happened to you once, and that is the apprehension that you have traveling. I mean, traveling becomes traumatic. Going to an airport becomes a point at which you feel, when are they going to pick me out? When I'm either leaving the country or even sadly coming. I've come back from places where there were revolutions taking place in Egypt and Syria and Tunisia and so forth, thinking, wow, the people have finally risen up and been detained. In Britain, thinking, whoa,
what a contrast, right?
What a contrast.
Right? Just there's a brother here, Shaheed Rahman. Assalamu alaikum, brother Shaheed Rahman. He says, I've been stopped 15 times. My recent stop was the worst, where they came to the plane and took me off with my elderly mother, and this was supposed to be random. and they kept us for 4.5 hours. Okay, again, what reason?
This is the problem. I think that suffering in silence is the hardest thing to do, really. And to know one thing I want to tell the brothers and sisters here is that when we came back from Guantanamo, had we remained silent, everybody to this day would have said Guantanamo is a good place because nobody else was coming out to speak out against it. It's crucial that people come out, speak, register, record what they've gone through, and again, visit the website Pass with Privacy and give us your stories. Let us know what's going on. Don't suffer in silence.
Another example, brother Jahangir Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, brother Jahangir. Thanks for tuning in. Jazakallah khair. He says, I think about this every time I travel. I have clients of all kinds. My phone is actually my meeting room and my workspace. I guess this is the case for many businesses these days. I have confidential client conversation and files posted on it. It is inconceivable that I would disclose them to anyone. Plus, I sign confidentiality agreements with many clients as well. My clients need to contact me when overseas. So you can see the real example that anybody who's any professional, any business, you are required to. Sorry, am I advertising the cup? Sorry, guys. You're required to maintain that confidentiality and the privacy to your clients, to your suppliers, to your providers, whoever they are. They share information with you on that basis, that this information is actually protected under the Data Protection Act. So there's real problems with this.
I mean, I have a question for the police. If any of the police are watching, I mean, do you seriously think that this law is why you signed up and joined the police force in the first place? I mean, is this what goes through your head, that I'm protecting society by the application of this law? Or do you feel like, I wish I could object? I wish I didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of police officers would feel that way. Is that this isn't about stopping crime. This is causing harassment to people. And it's actually, I think, in many cases, if you've done this to 500,000 people, then it's a point of resentment. No one's going to be happy in the result of this.
I'll tell you from my experience of talking to police, I try to engage them. And actually, off record, most of them, they say to me, especially when I'm going, let's say, for a break in the middle of the interrogation, they say, look, Mr. Rabbani, actually, I don't really agree with this, but it's the law, and I'm just an officer, and I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
So
not one day that there's a conscientious objector or two or three or many that comes along and says, I've had enough. I'm really hurting people by this. I'm not. There's no crime here. So what is my job? I joined up to stop crime.
Yes.
To make society better.
We need people with moral courage, even within the police force.
Yeah.
Because they know what's going on. They know there's things that are not right. All it takes is one or two people with that moral courage to do the right thing, knowing that there's going to be some sort of cost. And that inspires people. That allows people to actually do more. So I think there are good people out there. We need to encourage them, inshallah. There's so many comments here. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best to sort of have coffee, talk to you, as well as look at the.
Well, that's your job, multitasking.
I'm trying my best. So, and I'm really like jazakumullah to everybody who's sort of commenting and making dua. May Allah accept all of your dua. Jazakumullah khair. I personally feel the blessings of Allah all around. I'm very casual about it. I mean, some people are saying to me like,
as I said, Brother Rabbani will be returning to the police station tomorrow. We don't know what will happen, and alhamdulillah, in the worst case scenario, he may get arrested and charged, and we pray that doesn't happen. But he has said, you have said openly and a few times, that is something you're prepared to go to prison for. Now, I want to say that again. I want to say that again, because one of the things that we hear often, even as Cage, we defend people because they've been targeted by the state, not because they took a direct principle and said, if you want to prison me for it, I'm ready to do so. This is kind of a different, we've just upped the ante in a sense.
I think it's a really, really important point from a philosophical, from a practical, from a strategic, political, so many
principle point of view.
It's a really, really important point. We're here, we live here, we're citizens, we're Muslims at the same time. To oppose a law, an unjust law, is often the most moral thing to do, and it doesn't make you a bad citizen. Good citizens, in fact, do that. They work together to change and reform society, and that means opposing unfair, unjust laws and policies. I think there's a misunderstanding within Muslim community sometimes, even within some of the leadership and even the learned people in the Muslim community. They think that if you are opposing a law or speaking out against it, seeking its amendment or reform,
you're a troublemaker.
Somehow you're a troublemaker, or you're not a good citizen, or you're somehow not a good Muslim. It couldn't be further from the truth. I think good Muslims and good citizens will in fact get active, get involved, and try to seek to change society. And look at it from the flip side. If you look at the apartheid regime, I mean, atrocious what they did. They did all of it legally. It was lawful for them to segregate, to have racist policies. It was all lawful. It wasn't done like illegally. Look at some of the laws in the US currently that the black community are campaigning against. Look at the occupation, the Israel and Palestine conflict. They do it through the law. So if
I think people get the sense that Britain is a, an advanced country. It has good laws. Everything's fine. We're not being targeted in the street. So therefore, if we give up some of our liberties for the sake of security, what's the big deal?
Well, that's where we would get it wrong. I don't think it's liberty versus security. You must have your security and you must have your liberty at the same time. You must be able to. You have the right to be secure and you have the right to be private at the same time. So to frame it as security versus liberty is wrong. Okay, well, why should a citizen have to make that choice? Again, let's be very sensible. Of course, a state would act to protect national security, and it should. But what's happening here is total overreach. If the state was protecting the country from terrorists, it should be arresting thousands and thousands that it's stopping. The fact that it's letting all those people through means that they're completely innocent. Completely innocent of any wrongdoing. That means they're... And where's all that information going? That's another thing. About privacy we spoke earlier on. Where's all of that information going? It's being stored in databases. That includes DNA, fingerprints, all the data on your phone, your laptop, and so on. Where are these databases? Who are they being shared with? Where is information going? Is it going to then impact a person after they leave the stop? Maybe in their employment, maybe in the way the local authority deals with them, and so on. And then finally, how does a person remove themselves from these databases?
It's almost impossible. You'll never know.
We don't know.
And so, a recurrent question people ask all the time: you've done nothing wrong. What do you got to hide?
Yeah, that's a very, very prevalent view. And again, I think the question is wrong. What I would say is, right now, and you can answer on the Facebook app. Does everybody have curtains at home? Of course you do. And the question doesn't make sense. If you've got nothing to hide, why do you have curtains? You know the answer straight away. It's because it's about privacy.
Of course it is.
Right. Secondly, and I challenge anybody who believes in this concept that if you've got nothing to hide, why don't you just allow the state to intrude? I challenge you in a sort of half humorous way. Don't do this, but
we don't do things in halves at Cage. I'm sorry.
All right, Bismillah, here goes. If you believe in that argument, I challenge you to get onto our Facebook feed right now and write down your email address and your password. Put it both there so everybody can see. All we're going to do is we're just going to access the email. Just take a look. We're not going to do anything. You're not allowed to touch anything.
The argument they're going to give, though, is, well, no, this is just in a public domain. The authorities who we're supposed to trust, right? Supposed to trust the police. They're asking for it, and
again, okay, you won't give it to me because of that reason, right? There has to be a reason, and that's what we're arguing.
That's what it has to be. Well, even the Independent Review of Terrorism is saying that, isn't it?
He's saying the same thing.
He's saying that, well, without reason.
There has to be
no reason.
You're not going to just answer my question and leave your password for everybody to see. I mean, if you absolutely believe in that, then you would, because if you've got nothing to hide, what's the problem? Let us see what you're emailing. What's the problem? I don't see a problem with that. But you're not, because just common sense will tell you that it's about privacy.
Yeah, and even the issue of trust. I'm sorry, I have to say, the police do a job, but here they are doing a job that is in the opposite direction. It isn't the statistics show clearly they haven't caught hundreds and hundreds of terrorists. In fact, we don't even know how many they've caught, but I think you can count them on one hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so bro, I think we're gonna try and wrap up soon because it's gonna be time to end. But I want you to give me some things. Tell me some advices that you've learned about that you would suggest after you're traveling, that you would tell people to do when they're traveling, and why would you tell them to do that?
Okay, I'm gonna come to that inshallah in a moment. What I just want to share is actually we should have said this before, but we're not if you have any questions and things, the viewers on Facebook, please feel free to post them. If we can't address them right now,
we will
inshallah. We'll get onto Facebook later on inshallah, and we'll try and answer your questions inshallah, any comments you have. There's a brother saying, do you have curtains, bro? We answered that. We've got blinds here, so everybody's got curtains, alhamdulillah, because everybody values their privacy. Okay, there's three things I want to leave everybody thinking about. One is our community, especially, we have a lot of capacity. We are 3 million strong. We are a very, very youthful community. There's a lot of capacity to do good. We just lack a bit of self-belief and confidence. And because we hear the stories that are told about us, without realizing we internalize them. So I've got three things that inshallah I hope people can inshallah reflect on. One is we must practice compassion. Compassion means you have to act for other people beyond yourself. It's the opposite of self-interest. So as Muslims, as good people, moral people, we should be compassionate. We should care for others more than ourselves sometimes. Just compassion on its own isn't enough though. Our deen also teaches us to have courage. And courage means to act for other people while there's some sort of risk for yourself. So we need a courageously compassionate community. If we can work to build a courageously compassionate community, we would inshallah go to many, many good places. I believe that's possible. There's some shifts that need to happen in thinking. One of them, for example, is we value as a community, we value altruism, which means giving for benefiting other people. How does courage differ from altruism? It's the same thing, except it involves some sort of risk, some sort of cost. And the cost is one of two types. It's either a physical cost to the self, like that terrible story that we heard even in your case, and there are many, many other brothers who suffered those physical costs. And then there's another type of cost, which is social cost. That's the sort of the smearing, the ostracization, the
impact within the community.
The impact with the community. We must be willing to endure some of those social costs if we are to act courageously. And we must act courageously if we really, really care for one another as a community.
And of course, because this is kind of saying to people, well, there's a price to pay, there's a sacrifice you've got to make. But we're saying this, we're saying because we also care and recognize that everybody can't do this. Neither through our compassion would we wish it on everybody.
Of course not.
But what we would ask is that if you are unable to, then support those who can and do.
Exactly.
To strengthen those people who are in that position, and that is your support, that is your work. Our motto has been to witness, seek justice, and empower. And primarily, that's what Cage is about: to empower people through the stories of some of the worst case scenarios that we've come across in the war, in what's been regarded as the war on terror.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've run out of time. How much time do we have? Okay, can I just make a couple more points? I mean, your point about the password thing.
Yeah.
It's a bit risky going through it here because it's not going to be completely clear.
Sure.
But if I can just hold this up and say, this guide, it's available on our website, passwordprivacy.com. If you follow the instructions here, inshallah, you're going to be in a much better position to protect the data that is on your devices. If you choose to carry your devices, which is I think very normal, everybody does. If you have any questions, please just post it to us on Facebook and we'll go through that inshallah. What I do want to go back to is one thing I'm a bit uncomfortable about tomorrow is the way our community perceives a person, an individual who's arrested.
Especially when it's out in the open.
That did cause me some anxiety, and it does a little bit now.
Mm.
What I think we shouldn't do is tell ourselves those stories that have been told to us through a hostile media and political establishment, which is Muslims are number one terrorists or like terrorists or support terrorists, are criminals or have done something wrong and so on. And therefore any connection that a person has to arrest or the legal process, it's all about Muslims being criminals or terrorists. Or the other reaction is people who do see through this propaganda, they think, here's another brother, he's weak, he's oppressed, and we should make lots of dua for him, and make a hashtag for him, save Mu'adhdham or something like that.
Not again, please. That's enough.
Yeah.
Enough.
So we need a third way. We need a third way. We don't. These are the stories that have been told to us, not by ourselves, but by people who don't have a good intention towards us. What we need to tell ourselves is like, hang on, this is not an ordinary crime. I am not doing this because someone's telling me to do it. I'm doing it completely with open eyes. I'm doing it very purposefully. I'm doing it very deliberately. I believe that anybody in my position would do the same.
Yeah.
And just because there's some sort of connection to an arrest or a charge, it doesn't mean that that's it, I'm about to finish and that's it, and everybody has to come and rescue me. Not at all. Not at all. So that's something I want everybody to, inshallah, appreciate and try and understand, that there's no victim here. I have designed everything that I'm doing with the support of the brothers and sisters in Cage and the rest of the community. I've designed it myself. I'm doing it very, very deliberately.
So essentially, without sounding arrogant, you're in control of what it is that you're doing. You're not forced into any particular position.
Not at all.
You're entirely in control.
Completely with Allah's tawfiq. And I'll go a step further because it's important that people understand. One of the responses I've had when people have come up to me, and they assume that I'm going to court tomorrow, and they assume that from court I'm going to go straight to prison. But that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
They don't realize that I'm a complete.
That's what does happen generally in
terrorism
cases.
Yeah, okay, that's what generally happens, right?
Yeah.
So we've begun to believe that every Muslim is just one of those guys who gets done in terror trial, and you see the mugshot coming everywhere, and so they don't understand that actually I'm a completely innocent guy. They haven't even charged me. Only tomorrow I'm going to go and find out. Court and everything is a long, long way away. So why this mismatch in understanding is because people have become used to Muslims being constantly on the defensive. Instead, alhamdulillah, with the brothers and sisters at Cage, what we've done is we've proactively gone out there, and if I was uncomfortable with anything about my case, I'd hide. But I'm not. I know that what I'm doing is completely legitimate, and not only that, I'm doing a service, inshallah, in the cause of society, open society.
As I've said to the brothers and sisters before, this is a great moment of pride for me individually, for Cage as an organization, and I believe for the Muslim community and for Britain in general. Because to take a stance like this is extremely rare. To be prepared to go to prison for a principle and a fundamental belief, there are very few people who are ready to do that. Ready to do that at the point when you're sitting in the room with the police officers, where everything's against you, you're by yourself, you've just returned, you don't have your passport, you don't know what's going to happen next. At that point, you make a decision, and that decision can have far-reaching, reverberating effects. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows this to be a cause of empowerment and strength for the Muslim community and beyond. This is extremely important that we recognize this, and those people who are sitting on the fences elsewhere, I hope that you get onto this side and don't play catch up. It's always a sabiqun and awwalun. That's the most important. Those that will always be the most important. Those who come first and foremost in the beginning and don't play catch up and say afterwards when sort of victory is there, Inna kunna ma'akum. We were with you all along. Please don't do that. Be with us now. and come and visit the website. Again, as I said, past privacy.
Okay.
The hashtag also, make sure that you continue to tweet that out and to support it and to retweet it, which is a right to privacy.
Now I've got two phones to look at. MashaAllah, there's lots of tweets going out as part of the Twitter storm. May Allah reward you all, everybody who's participating. Jazakumullah khair. It's so encouraging. I'm meant to be picking up some tweets, but maybe one of my assistants can. Huh?
Scroll. You've been told to scroll. It doesn't say up or down, but just scroll.
Okay, so this is a mind in disguise. Opposing the law doesn't make you a troublemaker. It means you are morally conscious and are acting upon what's right to do. Completely true. Privacy is a right. It's not a crime. You shouldn't be criminalized for it. So some people are, saying that I shouldn't be charged. I don't believe I should be charged, definitely. But everything is in the hands of Allah.
Yeah, and
in each outcome,
a little spell in prison might do you a little bit good. You never know.
Alhamdulillah, itikaf is around the corner. Inshallah, it's not going to be the end of the world.
I've got to tell you this story. When I was in Guantanamo, there was a brother who we were all in kind of solitary confinement cells, but next to one another, we could speak to one another. So he said, I want this time in Ramadan, I want them to send me off and put me in solitary confinement. I said, why, bro? He says, because it's etikaf, it's the last 10 days of Ramadan, and I want to be in seclusion. I said, brother, we've been in seclusion for 3 years. Anyway.
SubhanAllah, that's the attitude, really. There's nothing that can break us if you don't allow it. If you don't allow it, everything's in Allah's hands. And we must carry a positive mindset, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. So, do you...
I don't even know which tweets to pick. I think I'm very sorry to all the viewers. Maybe Brother Muadham can have a go.
If there's any particular questions over here, what we see, what I can see clearly from here is that there's numerous people who support Cage, who want to, who recognize our work. Cage, Abu Idris, for example, is saying, Assalamu alaikum, Abu Idris, are campaigning to stop forcible surrender of social media passwords to airport security. That in itself, is just a statement that tells you where our principles are in this. And there are plenty of statements like that. People recognize it. And the other thing is that I think this is one of those campaigns, perhaps for Cage, one of those few campaigns really that can go right across the board. It doesn't matter what faith you are. It doesn't matter what background you are. It doesn't matter who you are. I quoted a Daily Mail journalist for whatever reason that you could well be targeted. In fact, if you remember the case of the guy David Miranda, who's the partner of Glenn Greenwald, traveling from Russia and going over to Brazil, he was stopped at Heathrow Airport, detained under terrorism legislation. He wasn't a Muslim, but he was held for 9 hours, and they took his information from him because of what? Because of WikiLeaks.
Exactly.
And WikiLeaks, what were they doing? They were releasing information that had come from Snowden.
That's right.
That was pointing out, again, what? Torture.
Yep.
The involvement in torture and abuse in Iraq. Absolutely. It comes back to the same thing. A lot of what this is about, in my view, is protecting and defending indefensible things like complicity and involvement in torture.
Absolutely. SubhanAllah. I want to just point out, there's still lots of comments on Facebook. I can't seem to get a grip on them, but all of them are, mashallah, they're just very, very encouraging. May Allah reward you all. I do encourage everybody who's viewing, please take time to read all the very beneficial comments that everybody's leaving. I wanted to say the Twitter storm is still ongoing. Yeah, when is it until?
Until it rains.
Until it rains, yeah. Okay, until the storm subsides. So, mashallah, there's lots of tweets coming out. So, a courageously compassionate community. That's what
I think that's a courageously compassionate community. Now, people think that Cage is all about confrontation and hardships and difficulties and so forth, and they associate it. But actually, if you meet the individuals in the organization, the people that we work for, the people that we represent, they are some of the most compassionate, courageous people that we've ever come across.
We must care for each other.
Yeah.
Everything we do, we must care for each other. And if that means taking some risks, then that's what we must do. Within reason, of course, and not everybody needs to take every risk. If you can't take the risk, no problem. Just support the ones who are, and that's how we can progress and develop, inshallah. I think we can
Any
slowly.
final thoughts about travel advice or anything like that? Do you want to give any of that, or do you
Yeah,
want
okay. I mean, what I'll just do is quickly summarize.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, see, every time I pick that up,
You think,
I
okay,
get,
you're not
oh,
sure
you know,
what the right thing to
actually,
say. Well, let me
yeah.
say it then. Look, generally,
I did write that guide with the help of some of the sisters at Cave.
alhamdulillah.
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm
Well,
about to.
yeah, I think
yeah,
that's right. So
yeah.
let me say it. We should generally, and I will give you this from my own experience. It happens. You develop a kind of process where you recognize that, okay, next time I travel, because of what happened to me last time, I'm going to get troubled. I haven't done anything wrong. I've got nothing to hide, in the sense that that I'm an innocent person. Nonetheless, I know what to expect, and that is to be harassed and targeted. So travel light. It's good to travel light and ensure that your devices, whichever ones you use, have got strong, good passwords. Now, this is all about passwords, but I can tell you I've been tortured into giving a password. So no one's going to easily try to get me to say that I should give my passwords for nothing at all without any suspicion. I'm just not going to accept it. You want to torture me into giving the password? Go ahead. But otherwise, I'm not going to accept that. Back up your information. You don't know what they're going to do. They'll take your phones away, and as they've done to me in the past, and may keep it for at least up to a week under Schedule 7. They can do that. And if necessary, if you think there are pictures of your family, your wife, your children, just wipe the phone. Take them off. Don't let something be there that later you'll regret, in the sense that somebody's seen your wife without a hijab, somebody's seen your children, and you don't know. And I'm telling you, police officers are human beings. Amongst them, just like us, are people who commit crimes. There are some, I met them in prison, imprisoned for committing crimes. So they're not angels. They are human beings just like us, and they are susceptible to all of the ills of society like anybody else is. Yes, they are entrusted with a particular job, but that does not make them angels. We should cooperate with them. We should work with them when necessary, but never put yourself in harm's way in that regard.
One of the comments that just came through, Abu Iqra says, one of my stops, the officers wanted passwords to my Dropbox and online banking. Can you believe that?
Goodness.
Can you believe that? They actually want password to your online banking. They'll probably convince you that, we need to check where money's coming from and all that.
And what I'll tell you what this does. I know a couple of cases where police have done a raid and before in the past, where people have left cash, and that cash has not been accounted for. So somebody has taken it. Now, not all the police officers are like that, but somebody. So the police officers can also be tempted into doing something. There's a case coming up right now in Birmingham, which is absolutely shocking. And it's been described that the police in that case actually physically planted the evidence, which includes weapons and bombs. Now, if it comes to the fore that happened, and from everything we've read that may well be true, then it tells us that this suggestion, this impunity that has existed over the years will now have to break. And the accountability process needs to be stepped up to, and we, the people, are those who hold them to account. Not just the politicians or the IPC. We, the people.
We must. So before we finish, I've just got 2-3 requests. Is that all right? So firstly, again, just to thank everybody. It's just been really amazing, the response. May Allah reward you all. Please continue to make dua. That's number one. The dua is actually what makes the change. We need Allah's support, we need Allah's blessings, and inshallah the dua is everybody can do right now, and it will have an effect. Secondly, we want you to do a couple of things. As I said earlier on, we need you to tell us your stories. It's very important. You need to contact people who you're close with and engage them. Send them the link to the website, tell them about this campaign, and then invite them to write down, even if it's like a paragraph or two, what happened to them. This is very important, because we need to show, again, remember there's 50,000 people that this is happening to on average every year. So there's a lot of people that's happening to, but people aren't coming forward. Inshallah, you're out there. Inshallah, you will come forward. So we look forward to that, number 2. Number 3, the holidays are coming up. So people will be traveling, both from here abroad.
Traveling whilst Muslim?
Traveling whilst Muslim will be happening a lot. Coming back, I mean, there'll be tourists coming in. So if you have contacts abroad, let's say you have some rich friends in the Gulf states, for example, come for big shopping visits to the UK, you need to tell them about
Vista
this.
Village.
Yeah, I mean, you need to tell them about this, that they are at risk of all of their possessions being seized, their Twitter and Facebook passwords being forcibly taken from them. They need to understand that. So that's very, very important for us, because abroad people think, when they look at Britain, they think, you know, that doesn't happen in the UK. Because they associate this type of behavior with authoritarian states, right? Yeah. But we know, all of you who are listening and watching, that it does have happened here. So those are 2-3 things, inshallah, that you can do, inshallah. And of course, please keep an eye out for what's happening. Just get your contacts to sign up to the Facebook page and the Twitter, follow us on Twitter and so on. Tomorrow, inshallah, we will post updates after
your visit to the police station.
Yeah. And inshallah, just want you to make dua for us, inshallah, wish us well. And I'm very confident, inshallah, everything will go fine. I'm completely calm about it.
I'd like to end with this, okay? Shakir Amir is somebody that we very close to us, very close friend. And just recently, the other day, I was with him, and somebody commented, "Why are you always smiling? 14 years in Guantanamo without charge or trial, beaten, tortured, abused. Why are you always smiling?" So his advice to everybody was that no matter what you're going through, no matter how difficult the situation is, smiling in the face of your brother is a sadaqah. At-tabassum fi wajhi akhika sadaqah. Smiling, and it also makes your detractors feel, what the hell am I doing? We used to do it in Guantanamo all the time. We used to break out into songs and nasheeds sometimes when they're thinking, wow, we just tortured these guys.
Yes,
and so really, keep smiling, brothers. Smile, and sisters, and friends, and whoever you are, Muslim or not Muslim, smile in the face of whatever difficulty that you're facing. It's an advice to myself and advice to you, particularly tomorrow. Even if you're interrogated, even if you're answering questions, do it with a smile on your face, not a frown. And as you know, it takes less muscles to smile than it does to frown.
Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair. So I think we can take leave there. Jazakumullah khair to everybody who's joined us today. May Allah reward you all.
Jazakumullah khair, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, make dua for us, and we hope that we'll speak to you again during Ramadan and beyond. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.